Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I am Christine Giles, and I'm one of the assistant directors here at GWA. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to spend a few minutes at the beginning of our presentation just to talk to you about some academic supports you can put into routines at home to help your child either get some additional intervention or enrichment, depending on where they're at. So it's important for a school to obtain licenses for online platforms. And why we do that, there's many reasons why. Number one, we're in the 21st century, and it's important for students to have access to online platforms that they can use wherever they go. So it's accessible, it's individualized, so all of the programs that we subscribe to will assess your student, find out exactly where they are, and then customize their learning sequence of topics and concepts to help strengthen their knowledge. So that's great. It's like a personalized tutor, right? And then one big thing is this assessment progress tracking. Whatever your child is doing on that online platform, the teacher has access to, and so she can gain a strong understanding of what needs to take place when they're in their classroom to help them with weak areas, or give them enrichment with strong areas that are noted on our reading or math platforms. Communication and collaboration. So this is fun for even the older grades. They can work together on some of our learning platforms. Also communication and collaboration with the parent and the teacher. Hey, I noticed Johnny is struggling with this on Moby Max or Reading Plus. I'm wondering if you could look at, this area or this tomorrow in class. So it just opens that door. Obviously, we want to make sure that at GWA we have a strong culture of parent involvement. When we have a parent who will partner with us as educators, your child's education is exponentially going to be strengthened, and they will go much further. So we hope that through online platforms you are brought to you're brought to some awareness of what they're learning in the classroom, what they're practicing at home, so that you're in touch with that. And then I mentioned flexibility and accessibility. During the pandemic, I was a kindergarten teacher up in Provo City School District, and I used my online platforms to measure their learning on a daily basis. How many times are they getting on to read? What did I need to send home to their parents to help them and their student? And so this is just amazing. We will hopefully never go through another school shutdown of any kind, but if we had to do anything, then we would have those resources immediately available for our use. And then, of course, I mentioned that we have a large number of students who are already at grade level proficient with all of the essential standards that we teach. So what can we do with them? This is just one more way that we can extend their learning and provide learning opportunities. We have kids right now in our 6th and 7th grade. We've adopted a program even as early as this week, but we have had in the past math platforms that help them continue their learning. Just this week, we've rolled out a new program that I'll talk to you about in a few minutes called IXL. And I'm so excited because this will give our students an opportunity to receive intervention and enrichment in all of the major subject areas: math, social studies, science, and reading. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to briefly go over what's available for you, just so you and your child, so that you're aware. So Lexia Core Reading is an amazing evidence-based, research-based reading program that covers the foundational reading concepts for a child, and it follows what we are now referring to as the science of reading, how the brain learns how to read. So this is for our kindergarten to 3rd graders, and it recommends for maximum effectiveness 2 to 4 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes a week. So if you want your child to make that exponential growth and really make gains that will push them through even to a year beyond their current reading level, you would set up the daily or bi-daily ritual of tapping into this program. In a minute, I'll show you how to gain access, but right now I just wanted you to know about this. Then as we move on, and I've included third here, this is a third through seventh. Reading Plus, we adopted this year. I did some significant research statewide, and Reading Plus was one of those programs that promoted another great growth opportunity for our third through seventh graders. So as soon as a child has mastered the concepts taught in Lexia Core, we move them on to Reading Plus. If you currently have a child on Lexia who has passed off their levels and they're feeling a little bored and tired of that platform, email your teacher. Let's get them on Reading Plus. This is an amazing platform that helps them with everything from fluency, accuracy, vocabulary, all of those essential reading skills. We also have this year Moby Max, which is a math platform. Moby Max can be accessed from K through 7th grade. Moby Max is a great way for students to reinforce their math skills that are taught in the classroom. This will be our last year for Moby Max because of this new program that we're launching right now is a pilot. We're piloting IXL learning in 4th through 7th this year, but then we'll be transitioning our K through 3 as well for math. But again, an amazing resource for students, and again, our 4th through 7th graders as of today have access to science, social studies, math, and reading. And they can access all of these platforms on what we call the Clever. Are you all familiar with the Clever badge, Clever login? Great. So your the younger grades often send home this badge in a folder, and they show the badge on the computer. These games, or not games, these learning platforms usually work best on an iPad. Sometimes they're a little bit slower on a desktop. That's just what I have learned. But again, an easy way for you to get on these. I think the hardest part is developing a daily routine. Every other day that you say, oh, it's Lexia time, it's Reading Plus time, it's IXL time. This is just a little reminder for you to set up that daily routine, because we have seen massive growth as our students that get on Reading Plus and Lexia. They're actually making one full grade level gain, those that are using it heavily. So I would encourage you to make sure you're aware of these platforms. Sit down with your child. You should never do the work for your child, because then it will offset that raw data that the teachers need to plan instruction when they come back to the classroom. But certainly help support your child by accessing these programs. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are those reading programs, Lexia and Reading Plus, available to them throughout the summer break?
Great question. Yes.
Okay.
And IXL will also be available for the open all throughout the summer.
And they just use their same login that they had during school?
Yep, same login they used in the prior grade, and actually will be the same login when they return in the fall. And the good thing about that is, I'm so glad you mentioned that, we see a general summer slide. When our students come back in August, we give them a benchmark assessment, and it is so common to see our K through 3 students, even our 4th grade students, take a little bit of a slide, some of them a lot. So if you have a K through 3 student, I would absolutely use Lexia or Reading Plus as often as you can, even every day, because that will only help them when they jump back in. In K through 3, we learn how to read. Well, actually K through 2. It's a learn how to read grade. We transition into reading to learn 3 through 7. So you can see why it is so essential for our students to be able to read and to comprehend by their 2nd grade year, or in 3rd grade. It's going to be a lot. So this is one way you can support us, and we can support your student, and your student support it. It's a win-win. Any other?
You said the iPad could make you
kindergarten and first are accessing it from an iPad, just so you know. Lexia is, think about a kindergartner using an iPad is going to be easier because it's swiping and touching. It might be a little bit easier. Any other questions? All right, and Janae, are you ready? Bryn, come on up. You can contact me, Christine Giles, anytime if you want to talk specifically about where your child is at with any academics. I'd be happy to sit down with you. We can look at state assessments. We can set up a meeting with your teacher. I am fully invested in each of your children and their success here in learning. No.
I am Bryn Bell. I am the school social worker, mental health therapist, and behaviorist. So, we're going to go over tonight a lot of different interventions from the home for struggling students. So we wanted Ms. Giles to touch base on the academics because that's clearly not my area. There are in this slideshow some awesome academic resources because I talked to the amazing team of instructional coaches and they gave them to me. But the other stuff is what I'm going to stress on. That's more my specialty. So we're going to talk about different struggles that students have. As we go through this today, I'm going to have in the slideshow all the things listed that the school does. Most of those things are probably happening if your child has that struggle. It's likely those things are already in place. But take note, feel free to reach out to your teacher. Hey, is this something that's happening for my kid? Because I think he struggles with that. So there will be a list of things the school will do for that struggle. And then there's going to be a list of things for home. I'm going to really spend the time on the home stuff today. But this will all be available to you. So you'll have the list for the school, but I'm not going to go through those because I want to be efficient with your time. And then I'm going to give you some resources on all of those. All of the resources are on that white paper. We've handed out the cards so that you can take notes of your individual situations or individual questions about your kids. Because tonight I wanted to be really effective in giving you a lot of information because we're going to hit on all different areas of struggle. So I'm going to give you a lot of information. Yeah, so if you need a note card for like taking some notes, so if something comes up where you want to talk to me individually, or something like strikes you as that sounds like my child, or that sounds like a barrier we're struggling with my kid, take some notes down, and then my email's on there, or stay after, we can talk. I just want to make sure that I get that your answers are individualized for your child and your situation. It's going to be different for every situation. So tonight I'm going to just give a lot of information, some overwhelm, hopefully not too much. And then, so I won't be taking like individual questions on your situations because I would need some more background and I need to probably meet with you a little bit more individually. Does that make sense? But take note and then reach out to me or stay after, and I would love to have more of that conversation with you. So the 6 barriers we're going to be talking about are behavioral, emotional, focus and attention, academic, motivational, and social. We want to remember that, of course, it takes a team, right? It's a team effort for all of our kids. There's administrators. Most of the time, administrators are dealing with discipline. This is like in general, because we all kind of bleed together in our roles. But counselors are dealing with emotional and behavioral struggles. Teachers are dealing with more academic and attention struggles. Parents and caregivers, we're hoping and expecting them to deal more with the executive functioning struggles or deficits, motivation issues, and social skill deficits. So that's kind of like, in general, people's roles. Of course, we're trying to all help with all of it. But hopefully that helps a little. You guys see? I'm trying to like not stand in the way of your slides. Okay, so behavioral struggles, what are those? So those would be like defiance, arguing, power struggling, blaming, lacking self-awareness or accountability, ignoring or refusing, rule breaking, lying, and stealing. Those are kind of like our behavioral barriers that we would categorize under behavior. There's a lot of things the school can do for those. A lot of things can be in place for the school. I'll make sure you guys get this slideshow. We're going to put it up on our website so you can make sure you're aware of like all the options of what maybe the school could be doing for your child. But I want to focus on home. So a big piece of the behavioral things, the best success we can get with changing a child's behavior and improving it at school is typically when we can connect with home and the consequence happens at home. So their behavior at school impacts something at home, like video game time or privileges or going out with friends or things like that. So that's usually a lot more beneficial than what we can offer, because at the time that we reach out to you, we've usually offered what we have. You know, we've offered a lot of the like rewards and systems we have in place here, where we're doing classroom reward programs. And so we typically need a little more help from follow through on consequences. And so how that looks is like we've got kids that we text home every day. Like, hey, it was a good day. And then that equates to like how much maybe video game time they have or something that they're earning at home. And we are seeing that to be like so much more effective for certain kids that just aren't as interested in the reward programs we have to offer. We are really hoping that at home you'll follow up with discussions on behavior. If a teacher reaches out to you, like please talk to the child, go over things. We're hoping at home that there's a lot of daily teaching of coping and coping skills. That is a hard thing because those are not targeted and taught as intensely at school as we like. We just focus a lot more obviously on academics and education. So coping skills and strategies, we need those taught at home. Daily teaching opportunities. So all of these deficits we talked about, all of these deficits, these are skill deficits, right? These are just skills that are lacking or skills we need to work on and strengthen. So these skills, we want daily teaching opportunities at home, daily skill building at home, modeling conflict resolution at home, requiring work at home so that the school environment is not the only place where demands are being placed. School environment cannot be the only place where a child is being made to do something they don't want to do or something difficult, because then the school's going to get a tremendous amount of pushback. If a child is more used to doing things that they don't want to do or that are uncomfortable, that are not fun or very boring at home, that's going to help them a lot in school. So tolerating boredom is something we want to work on with them. If your child is suspended, we really need that at-home connection. We need them picked up by parents. That's really helpful. Regularly review the rules of the school with them or help them understand what's expected at school. Maintain a structured routine at home. Make sure that the school environment is not the only environment that they're accessing where there's routine and structure and they're expected to transition and change and do things when they don't want to. Right? So there needs to be some routine at home, some structure that they have to follow, including, of course, like a bedtime routine. Build tolerance to challenge, right? Have them work at home on challenges or things that are difficult so they build the tolerance to challenge. So they're not overwhelmed easily with things that are hard. So building that at home, that can be through, Legos, games, like model airplane kind of things you buy. Things you're helping them do that are challenging, that really make them tolerate those difficult tasks that are new for them or that take some real time to master, right? Teach anger management. Oh wait, and tolerance to the answer no. Like help them really tolerate and work through the answer is no. And teach anger management and teach social skills. Social skills is a great one because our environment, we try to facilitate opportunities in the school for a lot of social interaction and a lot of social skill building, but they're not always directly targeted and taught. So that's something that probably needs to happen at home is like if you're seeing any skill deficits in like back and forth conversation, showing interest in others, expressing their preferences, and expressing when they want to say no to something or set a boundary. Those kind of things, we really hope there's a lot of teaching of that happening at home. Here are some great resources. I've put out some books for everyone and some websites that you can access. If you're looking at that barrier list and you're going, this is some areas that our child is struggling in, these are some great resources to access. And then the middle one is professionals. Like what professionals? I think that's a difficult question because we all feel like, well, who do you even go to? Who do you talk to, right? That can be overwhelming. What professionals would you talk to about those kind of barriers? And I put those here. So board certified behavior analyst, your pediatrician, social workers, family therapists, or psychologists. Typically, you're better professionals for dealing with behavioral issues. Any questions? You guys are awesome. Okay. Emotional barriers look like low tolerance for frustration, low tolerance for challenge, right? Getting really frustrated easily, giving up easily, getting overwhelmed quickly, not tolerating things that are hard or new or that they aren't good at right away. Okay, tantrums or frequent upset, issues with size of problem, like their reaction is much larger than it should be for the size of the problem. That is something that we need to address. Difficulty regulating their emotions, so if a child is like pretty emotional with every disappointment or pretty overly emotional with everything that's like the answer no or every challenge, then that might be an emotional struggle we need to address. If your child is anxious, low confidence, easily overwhelmed, if you get a lot of whining, complaining, or crying, these are more the emotional struggles that we see at school, and hopefully that we can work together to improve on with your child. So there's going to be a lot of things the teacher is doing. That's the list here of a lot of things that are available that school is doing. At home, we're really hoping that you will refuse to allow the student to come home unless they are truly sick. So we have a lot of emotional children, a lot of anxious children. And our goal is to really support them at school in feeling comfortable and safe, and we have a tremendous amount of intervention to do that. So we don't mind at all. We actually encourage, if they need to call home. Let's talk to mom. Let's talk to dad. Let's make sure that connection is there so you feel safe. But at the same time, we're hoping that you will tolerate their distress enough to allow them to stay, right? Unless, of course, they're truly sick, which we will let you know, or unless we can't get them out of distress, then I'll definitely call home and say, you know, like we can't get her there, and I don't want her upset long. But, I mean, we definitely have to work on that and have them try to de-escalate here at school, try to work through that distress here at school so that they learn that they can. Right? If they're picked up every time or rescued every time, they're going to learn that school is not a place where they can de-escalate or where they can feel safe. Okay? Be on time or early to reduce stress. I cannot tell you how many kids that I deal with that have anxiety are late for school. And when they're late for school, it just increases their distress. It increases that anxiety. If your child struggles with emotional difficulty or anxiety, being early or on time is huge, because when they come in late and they miss even a minute or the announcements or the morning meeting with their teacher, it really throws them. They miss information. They feel overly stressed. And it's not a great way to start the day, right? We don't want to trigger that nervous system at the very beginning of the day and have them try to work on getting calm. Instead, we want to start off the day calm and help that nervous system to start at its best. Closely monitoring the academics. If your child is anxious, stressed, or emotional, then we really, really need you to help them with their academics and monitor those and make sure they're not getting behind or overwhelmed. Especially our Physics 7, they're missing assignments and they're getting behind and playing catch up. It's a tremendous amount of stress for them to manage that on their own. So we really need some help from home on that. Communicate regularly with school, read the school emails. It's really taxing and hard on kids when their parents didn't know that something was happening that day, or that they were supposed to bring something, or that there was something different. And they feel stressed and overwhelmed when they get here. So just really reading the school emails, keeping up on what's going on with the school, making sure you're informed and you know what's happening with their education. Daily practice and utilization of coping. Like I said, that can be like board games. Those are a great one. Card games, right? Those help you tolerate those strong emotions that come up, right? When you have to tolerate losing or something not going your way. Those are great ways to tolerate those big, strong emotions that kids have. So social play dates and games and, making sure that they have to do it as is. They have to play it how it is. We're not going to let them win. We're not going to accommodate them. We're going to work through those things. We're going to work through those difficult, challenging things with them and let them access those strong emotions and work through them, right? So not trying to allow your child to avoid those or trying to make it so the environment is such that they don't ever get upset. We actually want to practice those things and practice what are the coping tools we're using for those. Daily structure and routine, including a bedtime. Obviously, if we have a kid who is exhausted, they're going to be overly emotional, right? So if I have a kid who's underslept, they're crying a lot throughout the day. It's disruptive to their education. They're tired. They don't handle triggers like they would if they were well rested, right? If you're well rested, you're going to handle those triggers better. If they're melting down about everything or they're blowing up their friends about everything, sometimes that's just simply like they are so tired. So bedtime is huge. Sleep is huge. Ensure that they are prepared with their materials. That's another one. Make sure they're coming with their materials and you're helping them with that and you're checking that they're prepared. That's going to reduce anxiety. And then build tolerance for discomfort, right? We've got to teach them, like, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. You can feel uncomfortable and still do it, right? You can feel that discomfort and still do the project or still come to school or still work through it. And we want to teach them not to be afraid of that feeling. You don't have to be afraid of that discomfort. It's something you can learn to sit with, recognize, label, and continue on with. It doesn't have to be something you're afraid of. Makes sense? That's a big one, is we see a low tolerance for discomfort, and that's a skill we really want built, and we need to work through. Practice, practice, practice. At home is a great place for that to happen. Here are some great resources for like emotional help with your kids. Your professionals for that would be like your mental health therapists, school counselors, social workers. You could talk to your pediatrician about any struggles you're having, especially if it's related to like sleep or extended duration tantrums, which are like 45 minutes to 2 hours. If you're having stuff like that, those are called extended duration tantrums. Something to talk to your pediatrician about. And psychologists are also an option. And these are some great websites to just give a lot of great teaching and ideas and ways that we can build these skills with your kid. Okay. All right, focus and attention. So if your child has barriers of focus and attention, they would look like inattentive, struggles with like being inattentive, unfocused, being off task, easily distracted, rushing through their work or rushing through things, lacking attention to detail, a lack of inhibition, right? That lack of being able to have an urge but fight that urge. So these are kids who act on almost every urge. I had an urge, I did it. Where we really want to work on that inhibition, that ability to not blurt out whatever comes to mind, but instead wait for an appropriate time, or not grab things out of someone's hand instead of us. You know, so those inhibition, that's that impulsivity. If you have an impulsive kid who's flirty or disruptive, if you're saying motor hyperactivity, this is a kid who's talking at you, not with you, but at you, right? Talking at you, excessive talking without break, or even just talking very, very quickly. That's speech hyperactivity, Motor hyperactivity would be, you know, just like a child who seems like they're driven by a motor, a child who's moving constantly, a child who is like really, really struggling with the inability to relax or to stay and do something, sit at a meal, those kind of things. The child just cannot even pause for a second. Kind of a good rule of thumb, all kids are always looking around and saying, what, I missed an instruction. Everyone's doing something and I missed it. They're trying to catch up. They're always, I've lost the paper, I don't know where it is. And you can imagine that's just a lot of stress. It's a cycle of tremendous stress. And feeling like you're always trying to catch up. Like you've always missed something. So it's a really hard thing to watch. I just feel for these kids. It's really hard on them. They also get, unfortunately, a lot of negative feedback from peers pervasive. They're not trying to be dishonest. They literally struggle to self-report and accurately like tell you everything that's going on. So your lifeline is that newsletter and keeping up with the emails at school. Follow up with discussions. If the teacher reaches out, just follow up and talk to your child. There's that. Making sure you're helping with like backpack organization. Maybe once a week, help them with the backpack. Help them clean it out. Help them get organized. Follow through with consequences at home. If they're missing work, maybe really requiring them to like work on some things at home to help catch up before they access video games, or like tie it in together. Like, hey, we have to do this much of some work. We've got to catch up at home. It's very likely with these kind of struggles, with like a focus struggle, they're not great at using their time effectively or efficiently at school, as effectively or efficiently as the kids available. So they're likely to be a little bit behind. They're likely to have not finished everything in the time that was allotted, and they're probably going to need some support just finishing things up at home. So tying that into maybe their video games and getting some of that done first, like that work first, then play, kind of teaching is so huge for them. Okay, daily structure and routine, super important for these kids. Ensure that they're prepared and assist with any unfinished work at home. GWA is a non-homework school. That means that we are not creating extra work and setting at home as homework. But anything that is given the appropriate amount of time, so most of the kids those grades. If that makes sense. Okay? And then memorization of math facts. There's a lot of resources and songs and videos to do that. Those are really, really important, those math facts. Which is hard. It's really hard for a lot of kids who don't memorize well or have a lower working memory. That's my son. So it's challenging. And those are a real holdup as they get into older grades. And they're doing that. It's really time consuming. These are some great resources from our instructional coaches. Those are on your paper. Those are going to be some really awesome places you can go for academic help. If your child struggles with motivation, so struggling to work independently, right? This is a kid who the teacher walks over and says, okay, get started, awesome, let's go, and then they walk away and the child does nothing. Most of the time, if they are not supported, they're not working. So if they're struggling to work without support or struggling to work independently, that's a pretty big deficit we need to work on. If they're making little effort, they really don't care a ton about their quality of work or getting it done, or they rush through, or they lack participation or engagement, they're just not engaging in their education, they're just not being an active participant in their own education, or they're choosing to do other things during class, like read or draw or create like paper clips. We have a lot of those kids that are often choosing to do something else, and we're redirecting them back. But you can imagine that's a tug of war all day, and so they're missing a lot of their education. So motivation is huge. Efforts to avoid, right? These are kids who are like going to the bathroom often, or taking frequent breaks, or out of the classroom a lot, and are like real slow to return. So there's some avoidance happening there, or they're just disinterested in the content, disinterested in grades, don't care, not real interested in their performance, don't really have a lot of motivation there. So there's a lot of things the school can do for that. We've got some great reward programs, contracts, and things we can set up with your child. So reach out if you feel like this fits your kid. At home, stay really on top of the schoolwork. Really, really help them with that piece. And staying on top of it, helping them be motivated. Following through with consequences at home, like I said, that can be really, really powerful for us. It helps so much when we have a family that will follow through on a connection between the work getting done and their access at home to like video games or other things. That would be tremendous to help your kid just engage in their education, right? And become, actively involved in their education. That does not mean they suddenly start really caring about grades and really like, oh, I just really care about getting an A and doing quality work. But it's okay, right? That's age appropriate. It's okay, but that is not necessarily a really important motivator for them. That's okay. Developmentally, that's fine. So that's why sometimes we have to tie it to something that is a motivator, right? What is it that you do care about? Let's see if we can get those kind of dependent on each other, because then we can get the performance we need for your child to engage in their education and eventually, in the future, build that motivation, that sense of success, and that good feeling where they really do want to achieve. But it's okay in K through 7 if that's not quite there yet, because developmentally it's not going to be there for some kids yet. So we need to get some of those external motivators and rewards in place to build that sense of connection with their academic achievement. Okay, daily structure, bedtimes, assisting them with unfinished work at home. We really we give as much time as we can to assignments. We pull kids out, grade the blades, we'll pull them out in the hall, keep trying to work with them one-on-one. So by the time something goes home, we just have given all the time that we can, because we have to move on, and we want your child to access the content we're moving on to, right? We never want your child to feel lost or behind, so we have to send stuff home sometimes. So helping them with that and working with them on that. Getting outside resources for support like tutors or help, participation and with really actively being a part of their own education. And then I've got a couple articles here that I thought were really, really great on just how to reach those unmotivated kids. Social difficulties, social stuff, we could go on and on. There's so many social skills that need to be developed K through 7. It's just a tremendous repertoire of skills that they are developing. But if your child is consistently having difficulty getting along with others, that would be like, this child has social struggles or fights or drama every year. Like every year. Seems to follow my child, right? Every group they're in, every grade they're in, like they just continually have conflict and drama. That might be an indicator that your child has some social skill deficit. If your child has some fighting, bullying, or consistent, I said that relationship drama. If you see manipulating behavior or anything unhealthy, or you see consistent unhealthy relationship patterns, where maybe they are being manipulated or exploited in relationships, and they struggle to seek out friends who are true friends, and they are drawn to people who are more like controlling them or exploiting or using them, or vice versa. If they have the patterns of being pretty overly controlling or manipulative to other kids in order to get what they want, that obviously would be a social skill deficit. Aggression, intimidation, if you see that they're provoking a lot, they're someone who's really trying to kind of upset those around them, just as kind of entertainment, which happens, right? That like poking and prodding, and we're trying to get someone upset because they know that they can. That can be, of course, a social skills deficit or struggle to be flexible or not get their way. Okay, so kids who are pretty rigid in play or pretty rigid very vocal and passionate about identifying disorders and treating them. Hope is not an intervention. Okay, so you might say like, well, I hope this happens. We're hoping this. We're really hopeful. That is great, but hope is not an intervention. Hope is not intervening or treating or fixing things. Hope is just a really great attitude, but we need intervention. We need to be addressing these things with very specific, research-based, targeted skill building or treatment. Waiting is not an intervention. You're like, well, we're waiting, we're seeing if they grow out of it, we're trying to wait and see. Waiting is not an intervention. And can be very detrimental, like I said, because untreated things that go untreated can become bigger and bigger problems and they don't go away. If the school is expressing concern to you about your child, please take it seriously. Okay? We have over 1,000 students. If we're reaching out, we're very concerned. And we want to work with you on things we're seeing. So don't wait. Please work with us. Please be a partner with us to address these things. So then when do you treat? Or when is it a disorder? Right? That's hard to know. A delay is developmental. So if a child has a delay, it means it's developmental. It means they are making progress developmentally. They're getting there, they're catching up. It's just a little bit of a delay from maybe where the peers are on that skill, but it's developmental and they're catching up. So if it's a delay, that means it's developmental. We're going to develop it. It's going to probably develop as they grow. Okay? A deficit is a missing skill. So that means like, no, they're missing a skill. We need to target it. We need to work on it. And that might be all we need to do, right? It's like, let's identify the skill deficits. Let's work on them. Let's build those skills. Let's get them stronger in those areas. Versus a disorder. So a disorder, for the definition of what a disorder is, a disorder means there has to be dysfunction in one or more evolved adaptations that are universal to the peers. So what does that mean? It means there has to be dysfunction in an ability that is universal across most of the peers. So most of the kids that age have this ability or have adapted in a way that my child isn't doing. Okay? And it has to lead to some harm or adverse consequences in their life, including ineffective functioning. They're not functioning the way that they need to for a high quality of life or for a high education, or they're having dysfunction or harm in a major life activity. What are those? What kind of areas are we talking about? If they have dysfunction or are really struggling with skills in these areas, and you're really concerned, and there's harm, there's negative consequences that they are experiencing because these things are not functioning at the level of universal development for that age, then these are the things that I would say are like really, really need to be taken seriously. So school attendance is being impacted. That's a big, big deal. If their social relationships are consistently being impacted, that's a big deal. You know that social deficits and social struggles can definitely lead to anxiety or depression down the road. Sleep is a huge one, right? Kids who have sleep struggles, sleep disorders, sleep issues really need to be evaluated and talked to the pediatrician. Sleep is so huge for their brain development and for their ability to interact in a great way the next day. Ability to adapt to the environment. So kids can adapt. Kids are pretty great at adapting. And the school environment is new to them, if it's a new school or a new school year, but it's not new 3-4 months into the school year. So if they have not adapted to that environment, that's definitely concerning, right? Universally, most kids have adapted, right? They adapt. They adapt to an environment that's not new. They adapt to a routine we've done a lot. They adapt to the skills that we have practiced that they're used to. If you're seeing like, but this child is not adapting, we're still having the exact same tantrum or the same struggle and it's cyclic, and we're just not adapting, that's a big concern. Any learning deficits or learning struggles that are repetitive or consistent, they're just not grasping a concept, then, or reading deficits, like make sure you're talking to your teachers about those. Abilities to adjust to change. We have changes all the time. Adjusting is hard. Change is hard for all of us. But if you're noticing like we really have a child who cannot adjust to change, the rigidity in their thinking or the rigidity in their inability to adjust or adapt, that's concerning. Reading is another one, of course, to be very concerned about. We need to always look at that. So where do you go and what do you do outside of school for those things? These are some services you can seek out outside of school. Some of these services are available in school, but to be honest, they're available at a pretty small amount, right? If your child's getting speech therapy, it's going to be maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. Outside of school, that's available at a higher rate. Occupational therapy is the same. You may want to intervene with medical professionals or with medication if any of those life areas are impacted. Those are really important life areas. Mental health therapy outside school or applied behavior analysis, which is like working with a behavior specialist or tutoring. So under those lists, you can see kind of the areas of struggle that you may want to seek out those services if that's the area your child is maybe showing somewhere else concern. Okay, if you're still not sure, talk to your doctor, talk to your teacher. Counselors, we're all here to help. Don't hesitate to take an online assessment. Take an online assessment. Read through the questions. You'll find them online. Just Google them. You'll read through the questions. If you're like, yeah, that's my kid. Oh, wow, yeah. Okay, then that gives you maybe some insight that like maybe you want to talk to a professional about it and see if another evaluation could be helpful. So don't hesitate to take an online assessment and learn about what this would look like in a child, or hey, are my child's deficits maybe crossing into that area of disorder? Am I getting into where it's like, this is probably a disorder we need to treat so that we can eliminate some of this distress for this child? Purchase a book on these struggles and read it. That's going to be really helpful. Get informed. Read a book in these areas and go like, gosh, is this my kid? Does this fit what we're dealing with? Or no, that's not what I'm seeing. Okay, but like read a book because you might be like, oh wow, yeah, this is what we're living, and this is very helpful and explains a lot. This is my information. I'm super happy to meet with you at any time. I'm super happy to have those individual conversations or like, give any feedback or answer any questions or hopefully point you in any direction with resources in the community. So reach out. We're always happy to help. Any questions? I know that was a ton of like flooding of information, but we're just like really desperate for that homeschool connection to be happening. We have seen it with some kids and it's so beneficial and powerful. We've seen massive change and turnaround in such a positive way with some of our kids that we are desperate to get that home connection and get some of these things happening in the home. We are also really, really passionate about kids not just receiving what's available at school, but receiving services or treatment or support outside of school if they need it. Okay, thanks you guys for coming. I will be here if you want to come on over and ask me anything, or feel free to reach out on email, and I'm happy to do a phone call